Woke up quick at about noon.
The familiar sounds of Eazy-E and NWA get us going here on this June 5th edition of the podcast with Damien Barling. I am Damien Barling. Thank you so much for downloading, streaming, tuning in, wherever you may be at. I'm so grateful that you are here. Game 3 of the NBA Finals is tonight. The series, of course, tied at 1. We'll talk about who is in and who is out, what adjustments the Raptors can make after that Game 2 loss. Congratulations go out to Bruce Bochy. We'll talk about his accomplishments here as the podcast roll along. We asked you a question on our text line, 916-888-5898. Of course, you can text that line anytime you want, 24/7, day or night. It is a direct line to me. It is a direct line to this podcast and everything that we discuss. But I had asked you, what are your off-season ideas for the Sacramento Kings? We got a big response yesterday after throwing that text message out there, which actually came from the text line the day before. So as I said when we started this podcast just a couple of days ago, this is your podcast. This is our podcast. This is our platform, and we're going to build it from scratch. So we'll talk about the Sacramento Kings here as the day rolls along. And what year is the WWE living in? We'll touch on that, man. We're going to have some fun today. Shortly after the podcast went live yesterday, we found out that Kevin Durant has been ruled out for Game 3 tonight. I don't think that's any surprise. I'm not sure is there really a chance that Kevin Durant is going to play here in the NBA Finals? It really does not feel like it. Now, they're saying, Steve Kerr said yesterday, that we're increasing his amount of work there on the floor. As a matter of fact, let's let Steve Kerr give you the injury report right here.
Kevin won't play tomorrow, but he's ramping up his exercise routine, his workouts. And Klay is day-to-day, so he's questionable. And Loon is out for the series. So there's your medical update.
Okay, so Klay is pretty obviously, Kevon Looney, that's pretty obvious what all that means. Kevin Durant said he's wrapping up his activities. This is the NBA Finals. There's only a couple of games left. There is, at most, 5 games left in the season. Now, what do you have to see from Kevin Durant to put him out there on the floor? I mean, and I'm not saying this to be a smartass. This is a very real question. Can Kevin Durant walk? Because you're asking, we're going to ramp up his activity. We're going to do this. Can Kevin Durant just walk from the court to the locker room without any limp? Because he stays in the locker room during the games. Now, I'm not trying to incite some sort of conspiracy theory here, Kevin Durant doesn't want to see us, doesn't want us to see him walk. I'm not trying to insinuate that. I'm sure he's back there getting treatment. I'm sure he's back there doing exercises. But what are we waiting for? What are we looking for with Kevin Durant? What is Steve Kerr looking for? And what does he have to see before putting him out there on the floor? Because again, there's only 5 games left. Klay Thompson, he said yesterday, was day-to-day. Klay Thompson, they believe, is going to be labeled as questionable for tonight. I'm sure there's not going to be a decision on Klay's availability until very, very close to game time. But he was comfortable enough to rule out Kevin Durant yesterday, which makes me just pose the question, how close is Kevin Durant really to playing? Now, Warriors fans will tell you that the Warriors have won 32 of their last 34 games when Steph Curry plays and Kevin Durant doesn't. The Warriors are already, this is an interesting little note here, the Warriors are already the first team to win an NBA Finals game, and that, of course, was Game 2, without their top scorer since the 1980 Lakers. I believe that was the famous Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, missed the game. Magic Johnson started at center, played all 5 positions. Kevin Durant has not played since he injured his calf on May 8th. So it's June 5th today. By the time Game 4 rolls around, we're talking about a month. Now, when the diagnosis came out that it wasn't an Achilles and that it was a calf strain, a lot of professional athletes who had been through this were like, "Oh, he's not going to play. There's no way he's going to be." If they get past Houston, there's no way he's going to be ready for the NBA Finals. Because remember, they were teasing in the Western Conference Finals, well, Kevin Durant might come back. I mean, he's going to be ruled out the next game for sure. But maybe if the series goes the distance. Okay, they get past the Houston Rockets. Okay, maybe he's going to be ready for the NBA Finals. Okay, he's not going to be ready for the NBA Finals. But maybe he'll be ready for the middle portion of the NBA Finals. Well, there is no Game 3.5. So we're here at 3. He's not ready. And what are they looking for? And what is Kevin Durant looking for? I'm sure he wants to get out there and help his team win. The series is tied at 1. We asked the question yesterday, by the way. I think Klay Thompson answered it. I'm not sure, but we asked yesterday if the outcome of Game 2 would affect the way that the Golden State Warriors, Steve Kerr, and all of these guys who are dealing with injuries approached Game 3. Here's Klay Thompson.
Obviously, I'll do anything I can to be out there, but it's all in their hands, and if there's any pain, it would be a no-go just because of the position we're in. You know, this could be a longer series, so there's no point in trying to go out there and re-aggravate it and potentially keep myself out of the whole entire finals instead of just one game.
Because of the position we're in, doesn't that sound like, and maybe this is just me reading too much into it, but doesn't it sound like he answered our question that we were asking yesterday? Like if the series was 2-0, if Toronto had managed to get that game, if Andre Iguodala's shot doesn't fall and Kawhi hits another crazy buzzer beater, if somehow the Toronto Raptors were able to win Game 2 and complete that comeback after that disastrous start to the second half, are we discussing Klay Thompson's availability today? Or is it Klay Thompson is playing? Are we discussing Kevin Durant's availability today if it's 2-0 Toronto? Has Kevin Durant already been ruled in? Oh, he's playing. He's playing in Game 3. We're down 2-0. We're going to rest all year. We'll deal with injuries in the offseason. Like, is that what we're talking about? Or because it's 1-1, the Golden State Warriors feel like they have a little cushion. Now, the Golden State Warriors are deep, man. We talk about the embarrassment of riches with Kevon Looney being out and an Olympic gold medalist and a multi-time All-Star Demarcus Cousins being in. I can't get over, I just can't stress enough how impressed I am with Demarcus Cousins' game in Game number 2. We've seen him have much larger scoring outputs. We've seen him have triple-doubles, but I don't know if in Demarcus Cousins' entire career we have ever seen more impactful plays than he had in Game number 2, whether it was assists or rebounds or the few baskets that he actually made. His presence on the floor is why the Golden State Warriors were able to bounce back after that crazy comeback by the Toronto Raptors, after that 18-0 run, of course, to start the second half. So what DeMarcus did was really impressive. There was all this talk about the box and one. Are they going to do that again? You know, Kawhi Leonard even acknowledged, like, that's not something you break out a lot. I don't think that's something that we're going to do regularly. They're going to be ready for it now. Like, they're going to know how to react to it. They're not going to be able to get away with that again, and they're certainly not going to be able to get away with that in long spurts because they're okay, we know Kevin Durant's not playing, but if Klay Thompson isn't playing, do we see more of that? In this term has been used to death over the course of the last couple of days because of Steph Curry. Are we going to see that janky defense again? Well, nah, like you might in a possession or two game in the fourth quarter, but are we going to see it in the first? Oh, man, I don't think so. Are we going to see it in the third quarter coming out of halftime? I don't think so. Maybe if Steph gets hot, you try to incorporate that defense and you try to force somebody else to compete with you. You try to force somebody else to beat you other than Steph Curry, but only in a situation if Steph gets hot. I don't think you're going to be able to see a lot of that because Steve Kerr has seen it now. It's like a rookie quarterback who's super successful. Like this is where we're going to be looking at with Baker Mayfield this year. You got a quarterback who has a really good first season. Well, now you got some game film on him, and you've got great coaches and defensive coordinators that know their tendencies. Well, now, in this case, you've got great coaches and defensive coordinators who, okay, they threw this at us. We weren't prepared for it at the time. Luckily, Andre Iguodala hit that shot. He came through in the clutch, former finals MVP. Great. Okay, they're not going to catch us on our heels with that again. If they go to that box and one, here's what we're going to do. I don't think Nick Nurse is going to attempt to implement that within the first 45 minutes of this game. He might not do it in the entire 48 minutes, or if it goes to overtime, I don't think he's going to do it a single time during this Game 3. But there are scenarios that you could see where, well, perhaps it's going to pop up. I would just be surprised because that the element of surprise is completely gone. And talking about Demarcus Cousins and the impact that he had in Game number 2, was looking at the Toronto Raptors and what they could do to counteract that, because now with Looney out, with Durant out, and with Klay Thompson questionable, like even if Klay plays, like Klay Thompson's catch and shoot ability, it's legendary. Like we talk about it all the time. The famous game he had against the Sacramento Kings, his number of shots, his number of points versus his number of dribbles was absurd. Wasn't it like 11 dribbles? 37 points in that quarter. It was like 11 dribbles throughout the entire game. He is a catch and shoot guy, which means he's running off screens. It means he's running around the court a lot. Even if he plays on that beat up hamstring, is he going to be able to do that? Like, ask Chris Paul about playing with a beat up hamstring. I don't know that he's going to be that effective. So I think, obviously, Steph Curry is their guy. Draymond Green is extremely impactful. But Game 3, amazingly, may very, very well center around their center. It may very well center around Demarcus Cousins and his ability to play. So looking at that, what can the Toronto Raptors do to combat that? What can the Toronto Raptors do to deal with Demarcus Cousins, who's understandably going to be fatigued? I mean, 27 and a half minutes in game number 2 after only playing 8 minutes in game number 1 and after having not played for 45 days. And you hear it all the time, no matter what cardio stuff he's doing, no matter how many court sprints he's doing, no matter how much treadmill work he's doing or pull work or interval work or any of that, it doesn't compare to the flow of a basketball game. And man, we saw that against the Sacramento Kings. We were making jokes about DeMarcus Cousins when the Warriors were playing the Kings that DeMarcus may very well die. He may die playing the Sacramento Kings because he was so fatigued. Is there a situation where the Toronto Raptors could go small with nothing more in mind than wearing out DeMarcus Cousins? Because if you neutralize DeMarcus Cousins, you have assuming Klay Thompson plays, you have a hobbled Klay Thompson, and now you've got Draymond Green and Steph Curry. Now you've evened out the odds a little bit because you've gone from Dre, and let's not forget that Andre Iguodala is banged up too. He's playing, but he's banged up. But now you've gone, from the death lineup with, you've got DeMarcus and you've got Kevin Durant and Steph and Klay and Draymond to all of a sudden, well, we've fatigued DeMarcus Cousins. Klay Thompson is beat up. Kevin Durant is out. Andre Iguodala is hobbled. So now we've got to figure out Steph Curry and Draymond Green. You've already got Kawhi Leonard on your roster. Now you've evened things out a little bit. Like, could you pull Marc Gasol from the starting lineup if you're the Toronto Raptors and play? I don't know what a small look would be for them. I feel like it's Fred VanVleet, who's done a pretty good job against Steph Curry. In the 56 minutes that Steph Curry has played with VanVleet on the court, he's 7 of 23 from the field, 3 of 12 from 3, and a -7 rating. So, I mean, he's doing something right. So what if you threw him out there, you move Siakam over, and then you've got Kawhi, Lowry, and Danny Green? I think one of the most embarrassing things about this matchup, when you look at, Draymond Green, one of the best defenders on the planet, in the NBA Finals, is guarding Kyle Lowry. And that's not a knock on Kyle Lowry, but think about that. You've got one of the best defensive players on the planet, and he doesn't have to guard the other team's best player. And he doesn't even have to guard the other team's second best player in Kawhi and Siakam, because you've got Klay Thompson. Now, that may change tonight, but you've got Klay Thompson and Andre Iguodala handling those defensive assignments. That's amazing. Now, again, I don't know. Klay Thompson's availability aside, let's just go with the assumption that he plays. Do you move him to Kyle Lowry, who's probably the weakest of the three, or do you put Steph on Kyle Lowry and move Klay Thompson more to that floating position where he probably doesn't really have to play much defense, period. He can just kind of afloat a little bit on that side of the court and preserve himself for the offensive end where they're going to need him the most. I don't know, man. I'm just trying to come again. This goes back to the conversation we had yesterday, trying to create scenarios where the Golden State Warriors aren't winning another NBA championship. That's all we're doing right here. Like, I can't imagine. Like, I never would have guessed at the beginning of the year. One, I never would guess I'd be doing a daily sports podcast instead of a daily sports radio show, but I'm not bitter about that at all. But I never would have thought, you know what? You know what might really give the Golden State Warriors trouble? If the Raptors start Fred VanVleet. Boy, that would really create an interesting night. But we're creating scenarios. We're creating scenarios by who's playing, who's not playing. We're looking at numbers like I just did with the 56 minutes of Curry versus VanVleet. The matchup of the century. By the way, Kyle Lowry, man, he's got to be better. Like, how many times do we got to say that here in the playoffs? And I feel like it's just constantly picking on Kyle Lowry. I feel like every time the playoffs roll around, we're constantly picking on Kyle Lowry, and maybe it's deserved here at this point. 20 points on 6 of 20 shooting with 11 assists. That's through 2 games. Bruh. He's got to be better than that, man. Not only does he got to be better, he's got to be significantly better than that. The Raptors are 1-1 despite Kyle Lowry. They have to win a game because of Kyle Lowry. Game 1, that was Siakam, man. No one will argue that. Kawhi, you know what? All of this talk about Klay and KD and Iggy and Demarcus returning, we may be ignoring one of the most important injuries in the series. Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard he's played well. I think coming off of both series, the Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, he looked like there were questions. Oh man, we forgot. He was so in and out of the lineup during the regular season, missing, I think, 20 games, close to 20 games. We forgot how great Kawhi Leonard is. Kawhi Leonard might be the best player in basketball. That was the conversation following the 76ers series, following the Milwaukee Bucks series. He might be the best player in all of basketball. We forgot about him. And here we are again, forgetting about Kawhi Leonard, forgetting about the fact he's having a very good NBA Finals in which he's obviously hampered by something. And that's going back a couple of series now. But we're not talking about it because Kevin Durant is out and Klay Thompson is now injured. And you've got the Iguodala playing agitated. You have Steph Curry, he was sick or dehydrated or whatever was going on with him last game. All of that was getting primary focus. But Kawhi is just out there. He's playing. And there's not a lot of acknowledgement about the fact that he seems to be a little bit banged up. Here's more from Klay Thompson talking about Kawhi Leonard.
Doubling off a ball screen or switching aggressively, picking up at half court, trying to make him work for every possession. Lucky for us, we have so many great defenders, we can throw many looks at him. But Kawhi just presents a lot of problems. Much different challenge than what I faced these last few rounds. So I embrace it, and it's fun to measure yourself against the best.
So knowing that he's hobbled and he's still having the series that he's having, and he might be, he's a little bit banged up. He's still having the series that he's having. He's putting in work against one of the best defensive teams in the league. Certainly 3 of the best defensive players. Kevin Durant's not even on the floor, but you still got Klay, you still got Iggy, and you still got Draymond Green out there. So even on switches, like Kawhi Leonard's going against one of the toughest players in the league, and it doesn't matter which one winds up on him. Here's Kawhi talking about his body as the series rolls along.
Right now, it's possible 5 games left and, about 12 days. If you could run, really. I mean, if you can't run, then you're not going to be able to play. That's how you pretty much measure things at this time. That's all I could really say. If you can't run, you definitely just cannot play.
There you go. Mr. Charisma. I'm falling in love. I'm falling more and more in love with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, of course, was traded in the offseason for DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan appeared on Bleacher Report with Taylor Rooks. He says, if it wasn't for all of the years and groundwork that I did before then, this finals run wouldn't be possible. I fought and I sacrificed. I feel kind of bad for DeMar DeRozan. I mean, he thinks he's the sacrificial lamb. I get that. Here's his line. I pushed the limits to where I had to be the sacrificial lamb. You just have to sit back and understand you are the reason so many things were even possible. I'm sure it's hard for him, man. Like, think back to where the Toronto Raptors were last year, getting swept by a LeBron James-led team. Think about where the Toronto Raptors have been the last couple of years in the NBA playoffs. Like, they've had great regular season records. They've had high expectations. Last year, I thought it was going to be completely different for them. And then the playoffs rolled around, and it very obviously wasn't. It was just more of the same. And Masai Ujiri had to make a call. He did. He rolled the dice. Leading into the finals, there were all these articles by great reporters, by the way, about how this gamble from the Toronto Raptors and Masai Ujiri had really paid off. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, yeah, you're in the NBA Finals. That's awesome. But doesn't the trade only pay off if A, you win, or B, you re-sign Kawhi Leonard? Like, if you just go to the NBA Finals and lose, is that, like, did it really pay off? Like, is that it's certainly a positive to play in the NBA Finals, but is that the goal? You go get Kawhi Leonard it's a gamble because you're getting rid of DeMar DeRozan. And maybe that's an underlooked part that we haven't spent enough time, talking about when evaluating this trade. Maybe the Raptors didn't mark that contract they signed DeMar DeRozan to moving forward. Now, DeMar had a fantastic season with the San Antonio Spurs. He was able to help get the San Antonio Spurs to the 7th spot in a brutal Western Conference playoff hunt, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. He's a very good player. But have we looked at it from the side of the Toronto Raptors and then, maybe it's just run its course. If worst comes to worst, we had a year with Kawhi. We've got a year to win him over. If we don't do it, we've cleared ourselves of DeMar DeRozan's contract, and we can see what we can build now. You obviously got a stud there in Siakam. I don't know what you do with Kyle Lowry, because these conversations about his performance in the playoffs are going to have to stop. Now, he's had moments where he's been impactful, like he's mattered. I think he had 7 points in game 1. Like, okay. But they were meaningful. Like, he had moments that mattered. But, like, he was your second best player coming into the year. Siakam has snatched that from him. Now he's your third best player, but he's kind of just withers in the moment. I don't think DeMar DeRozan is a sacrificial lamb. Like, bro, you were traded for Kawhi Leonard. You were traded for one of the best players on the planet. We truthfully, and I do believe this, we forgot how great Kawhi Leonard was because we were so wrapped up in the weird ending to his run with the San Antonio Spurs. We were so wrapped up in whether or not he was injured or not. We were so wrapped up in everything that didn't involve his play on the floor. And his play on the floor is incredible. And he's showing that he's shown it through the entire season. I thought Kawhi Leonard was a front runner very early in the season for the NBA MVP. But as the season went along, it was like, okay, he's really missed a lot of games. He's probably going to be completely taken out of that conversation. But now, with the postseason here, I mean, does anyone think? I know the NBA Finals MVP is the NBA Finals. It's that series. It's that most valuable player. But if the Raptors win, is there any way Kawhi Leonard isn't getting it? And right now, with one win apiece, is Demarcus Cousins the front runner to win? Because we do everything too early. Like, that's what we do. We've got to create conversations, right? Is Demarcus Cousins right now the front runner for the NBA Finals MVP if the Golden State Warriors win? It's not Steph. Is it Iggy again? Is Andre Iguodala going to be a 2-time NBA Finals MVP? Is it a big deal if Steph Curry doesn't win an MVP in the NBA Finals? Text your thoughts. Let me know what you're thinking. 916-888. Did I say too many eights? 916-888-5898. I picked this number because of all the eights. I love it. 916-888-5898. Let me know your thoughts there on some of those questions. We threw out a Kevin Durant shirt came out yesterday from Nike, or at least, I don't know if the shirt came out, but there was a screenshot of it that was leaked that it's something about, your next step, your next move. And, Maryland was in there, and Texas was in there, and Oklahoma City, and Oakland. And then at the very bottom, there was San Francisco. So is this shirt like the equivalent of Kawhi Leonard allegedly purchasing a property in Toronto? Like, there is nothing like NBA free agency where we desperately, before June 30th, it used to be July 1st, before the start of NBA free agency, we desperately try to figure out where these guys are going. Like, as if they already know. And some of them might not. But San Francisco, where that beautiful new Chase Arena is at, that was he just tipped his hand. Kevin Durant tipped his hand. He's re-signing with the Golden State Warriors. Kawhi Leonard is buying property in Toronto. Let's completely ignore the fact that he also bought property in Los Angeles and just say he is re-signing with the Toronto Raptors. I love it. Don't you think there's probably like 4 or 5 shirts that Nike produced and San Francisco is replaced by Los Angeles or New York or Sacramento? Kevin Durant comes and takes a 4-year, $140 million contract to play with the Sacramento Kings next season. Lionel Hollins joined Jason Kidd's staff there in Los Angeles. Yes, I'm aware that Jason Kidd is not the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, but come on. Let's not pretend like we don't know the deal. Lionel Hollins joined Jason Kidd on, allegedly, Frank Vogel's staff there. I know a lot of people have texted and asked about the Sacramento Kings coaching staff, obviously because of what's going on with the Sacramento Kings. I believe Luke Walton has formed a good portion of his staff, but because of what's going on with him and the investigation, the joint investigation from the Sacramento Kings and the National Basketball Association, that's kind of just been kept quiet. I think there have been some strategic leaks by the organization, or just some great reporting by guys like Sam Amick, who have been able to figure out what that coaching staff is doing. One thing I've heard from multiple people, and I don't really know what this means, but I know they were actively searching for a female assistant to join the staff, kind of in the role that Becky Hammon was a couple of years ago. Becky Hammon used to be a, kind of the last assistant coach, like a behind the bench coach, and obviously she has moved up since then. But I had heard from a couple of people that the Sacramento Kings may be actively looking to find a woman to fill that role. So we will see where that goes. Again, you can text the show day or night. It is our 24/7 text line at 916-888-5898. And you can connect with me on social media as well. We've been very active on there since the start of this podcast on Monday, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Just search my name, Damien Barling. Obviously, if it's Instagram or Twitter, just at Damien Barling. Make sure you follow on all of those formats. Like, friend, do whatever you got to do, man, because we got a lot of great stuff coming up here on the podcast with Damien Barling. I was sad to see the news from Andrew McCutchen yesterday. Tore his ACL. Obviously, he's going to be out for the remainder of the season for the Philadelphia Phillies. 32 years old. He's having a pretty good year. 256, 10 home runs, 29 RBIs. Now, these are the stats that I know from baseball. You got your batting average, you got your home runs, you got your RBIs. He even had, up until this point, a National League high 43 walks. Like, these are all, I don't know the advanced, metrics, like WAR and all of those. I don't know all of those different stats. But I know these. And I really like Andrew McCutchen, man. I fell in love with him when he was in the Bay Area. He's got such a great personality, man. He's a great follow on social media. And, man, he's just one of those guys. He was the MVP in 2013. He's just one of those guys, man. He's got a great, big personality. I wish Major League Baseball could have found a way to market that. I wish he would have gotten more love. I wish he would have gotten more endorsements. I wish he was on more talk shows. I wish he could have been the face of Major League Baseball, man, because he's fun. He's got a great personality in a sport in which it doesn't feel like there's a lot of fun. It's like the sport that markets nothing. You've got guys, you've got characters, you've got, like, who was the last, what was my guy's name in San Francisco with the beard? Brian Wilson, right? He was marketable, and I think he got some love because he had the new unique look, he had the unique personality. Major League Baseball's got to take advantage of those guys. They really do. I know Mike Trout is the best player in baseball. I get all that. His personality is dry. Find a way to market your guys with great personalities. Andrew McCutchen was a good ball player with a great personality. You could have done something with him. Not that his career is over. Again, he's 32 years old. I'm not saying because he tore his ACL, his career is over. His season's over. But, man, he's a really good ball player. He's going to be in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is going to be a marquee team for the next few years. I think this was his first year of a 3-year deal, so he's locked in there. And I think Philadelphia is building something special, whether, Bryce Harper gets his act together or not. I don't know, but Philadelphia's got something going right now. And I think they're going to have something going for years to come. They're leading the National League East, for goodness sakes. A team that is leading absolutely nothing is the San Francisco Giants, but congratulations to Bruce Bochy, another guy who is just impossible not to like. The Giants got a 9-3 win yesterday, the 1,000th career victory for Bruce Bochy as the San Francisco Giants manager. He joined John McGraw as the only Giants managers to win 1,000. Spoiler alert, John McGraw won significantly more than 1,000 games. But Bruce Bochy, this is a cool little note, made his debut in San Francisco back in 1978. Again, he's going to retire at the end of this year. He is an impossible guy not to like. Great personality, tremendous voice. Like, with that voice that Bruce Bochy has and that delivery that he has, I don't know that he could have done anything other than be a baseball manager. Like, Bruce Bochy, you take Bruce Bochy out, the only other obvious baseball manager is the guy from Major League, Lou. He is the quintessential baseball manager, along with Bruce Bochy. So congratulations to Bruce Bochy. I'm sure the way this season was going, he was wondering if he was ever going to get to that 1,000th win. This has just been a disastrous year for the San Francisco Giants, and now I'm reading articles praising them for, well, they haven't dumped off their veterans. Every time I get a Bleacher Report alert about the San Francisco Giants or alert from The Athletic about the San Francisco Giants, it's, well, here are some trade scenarios for Madison Bumgarner. I'm like, okay, that's kind of what baseball does. Things go south. They blow it all up. Understandably, like, I get it. But they've resisted that formula here so far. The Florida Marlins scored 11 runs in the 5th inning yesterday. I don't know why. I just felt like telling you that. It was amusing as hell to watch all the highlights. They went on to win 16-0. Garrett Cooper had a career high 4 of Miami's 19 hits. The Florida Marlins, by the way, have won 12 of their last 17 games. In the 5th inning alone, Miami had 3 doubles, 6 singles, and they sent 15 batters to the plate. See, that's fun. And I think immediately following the conclusion of that inning, the game should be over. Even though we've seen some pretty spectacular comebacks. Like, you're able to put up that many runs. You put up 11 runs in an inning. Okay, you win. Good for you. On a more serious note, I guess this is day number 2 of commissioner talk here on the podcast with Damien Barling. Yesterday, it was NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Today, it is Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred, who said he does not expect teams to make changes to the protective netting around ballparks during the season, although he expects conversations to continue about whether netting should be extended. Now, I'm fascinated by this for a number of reasons, because I would like to hear the argument about why netting shouldn't be extended. Because you had a situation in Houston at Minute Maid Park where a very young girl, I think she was 4 years old, got hit in the head with a baseball. And it shook both teams. It shook everybody. The girl, I guess, Manfred said he's not exactly keeping tabs on this. Major League Baseball isn't keeping tabs on it. The Houston Astros are, and they're relaying information to the commissioner's office. In my mind, and I understand I'm an outsider here, but Major League Baseball should be terrified of this. How many of you have sat on like one of the like the first baseline or the third baseline? Like, how many of you have sat there? I have a couple of times on the third baseline, not really in a position to where you wouldn't have enough time. Like, I've sat far enough away to react to a fly ball or a line drive. I've been in position at Fenway for, a foul ball coming into my area. I'm good. I don't need that. Because you're looking up and there's this moment of excitement, like, where is it going? Oh, it's here. It's right above us. Oh, it's coming down fast. Oh, okay, now there's 50 hands like reaching over mine. So I don't know what's about to happen here. And then the wind hits it and winds up, at least in this particular scenario that I'm thinking of, the wind in Boston hit it, pushed it about 7 feet to my left. It hit the steps and then bounced 4,000 miles into the air again. And then that whole scenario played itself out one more time. Like, I don't need a foul ball. I do not like the feeling of being under a foul ball at baseball. Now, that is significantly different than these these line drives that are hitting off bats and headed into the stands at ridiculously rapid rates. So the argument, I assume, the commissioner is going to make is, well, we've talked to some of our season ticket holders and, boy, they don't want to sit behind netting, so we're just not going to extend this netting. We're going to put everybody at risk because a couple of our high rollers, they don't want to extend. They don't want to sit behind netting. They pay big money for their tickets. I don't know why I'm talking about that. That's not what Rob Manfred sounds like. So I don't know why I did that. But you get where I'm coming from here. I feel like that's the argument that's going to be made. And I think it's a bad argument. I don't think it works. Because you have to protect the people that are there. It's like in hockey. Hockey, they got the glass everywhere. Well, there's a reason for that. There's a reason that glass is there. There's the reason that protection is there. You don't want one of those pucks flying into the stand, man. Are you kidding? That's crazy. But no, I don't want to sit behind glass. I want a clear view of the ice. Dude, get out of here. Go watch it at home then. Same thing with baseball. First of all, let's not pretend there's a whole bunch of people going to baseball games, because there's not. Tune on the baseball game. Now, I know that there are market differences across the league. I completely understand that. But if you look at a whole lot of ballparks in the middle of a day on a Tuesday, you could put the protective netting up. No one's going to freaking care because there's already nobody there. There's no argument to not do this. And a couple of cranky season ticket holders, that's fine. Give up your tickets. Somebody else will take them. Obviously, if you have a seat where your view... I've sat behind home plate before. The net doesn't bother me. Like, I've sat in the netting area. It's not even remotely distracting. This is the most absurd argument, and this is my constant frustration with Major League Baseball. They refuse to get out of their own way. They refuse to adapt. They refuse to evolve. They don't grow. Well, it's never been that way before, so damn it, we're not going to make that way now. Don't walk over my mound. Don't break any of my 457 unwritten rules. Dog, stop. 1, take the safety of your fans seriously. 2, you guys need to start having some fun. Flip bats. Stare at, if you're a pitcher and you strike somebody out, stare at them. You're a batter, you get a hit, flip the hell out of that bat. Do all of that. And don't retaliate with a 98-mile fastball to the head or to the elbow or to the arm or to the hand or to the ass. It doesn't matter where it hits. Don't do it. The baseball is a weapon in that situation. Adapt, evolve, be fun. Most of all, man, make your fans safe. I hate sitting along those foul lines. I hate it. I mean, I'm not pretending like I go to 1,000 baseball games. I don't. I've only been to a couple in that position. It was the third baseline every time. One of them was Yankee Stadium. The other one was Fenway. And then I've sat behind the net. I've sat behind the netting in Wrigley. Actually, I think it was going to see Derek Lee when he played for the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field. And family and friends are kind of in that area behind home plate. You ever sat there? You ever sat behind the netting and go, man, this would be so much fun if the netting wasn't there? It's silly. Put the netting up, man. People are getting hurt. Didn't somebody die at, was it Dodger Stadium? Maybe last year because of injuries from a foul ball? And didn't a really old lady get hit with a foul ball? Like, we're getting to the point where, like, who's safe to sit in those areas? Like, do you have to be really athletic men and women of a certain age? Like how many times does a producer catch a guy or a girl or a kid sleeping in the audience? How many times does a producer, a cameraman, catch a guy or a girl or a kid just completely oblivious to what's going on and on their phone? Okay, well, now imagine a ball comes flying that way. And even if you're paying 100% attention and that foul ball is coming at you too quick to react. Like, no matter how athletic you are. Sprinters, they got great reaction time, right? They're listening for that gun. Usain Bolt could be sitting back there. I don't think that he's going to react fast enough. That's just how fast that ball is coming at you. And you don't even have time to process what's going on. Because you see the swing, you hear the sound, and the ball just hit me in the head. There's no reason to not have a protective netting up. Now, I understand that Rob Manfred said, well, maybe that's not something that we could do during the season. I don't agree with it, but I don't know the logistics behind it, so I'm not going to criticize him for that yet. But I do wonder, don't you have the All-Star break coming up? Like, that's a good enough time to net every stadium in Major League Baseball, isn't it? Well, it's not, because what they're saying is they've got to clear it with the people who pay the most money at the ballparks. And does putting netting up, here's another question. Does putting netting up invite more people to the ballpark? Like, does anybody go to the park with their kids and go, I don't want to sit here? I know there are signs posted that say, be alert, be aware, foul ball, high foul ball traffic area. I'm paraphrasing here, but there's something like that posted at ballparks. Like, is that enough for you to take your 5-year-old or your 6-year-old, or is it enough to take your 10-year-old or 13-year-old? I don't know, man. I'm not going to kill Rob Manfred for saying they won't extend the netting during the season. Again, because I don't know the logistics behind it. But I sure feel like with that All-Star break coming up next month that they could do it. And I'm anxious, and to be completely fair to the story, I'll quote another part of this article here that I was looking at last night. Following recommendations from Major League Baseball by the start of the 2018 season, all 30 teams had expanded their protective netting to at least the far ends of the dugout after several fans were injured by foul balls in 2017. Okay, so that's a positive step. Right? That was the first step, but it needs to be extended further. And if you have an argument against that, I want to hear it. We'll revisit it tomorrow. 916-888-5898. Send that to me right now. 916-888-5898. Appreciate you being here with us. If you're enjoying what you're listening to, besides me fumbling through that phone number over and over again, we're starting from scratch here on the podcast platform, and we're off to a great start. That is 100% thanks to you. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Thank you to everyone who has rated, and thank you to everyone that has reviewed the show. If you haven't yet, please do those things. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show. I would really appreciate it. Can I read one quick review to you? It was such a great one. It's on iTunes. I keep saying iTunes. It's on the Apple Podcast. And it's such a backhanded compliment. I thought it was great. First of all, it's a 5-star review, so thank you for that. You took the time to review, so thank you for that. It's titled Back for Good? And the review reads as, Damien is a good sports talk show host. I just hope he decides to actually stick with the podcast this time. Don't ghost us again and stop doing the series after only a few weeks. Again, thank you for the review. Thank you for the 5-star rating. I did that Be Conscious series for 24 straight weeks. That show, that 1 week, that 1 day a week show was grueling. I was burning through books at a weekly rate. I was watching 12-part series at a weekly rate. I was trying to book guests. And I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. That podcast was 1,000% my idea. The company loved the idea. They wanted me to expand the platform a little bit. They wanted me to dive deeper into topics that I had mentioned on the radio show. And I thought it was a great idea. I willingly undertook that act, and I did it for 20 some odd weeks. And then I took a little break, an intentional break, and then things just kind of, I got really locked into what we were doing. And I'm not making excuses here at this point. I got really locked into what we were doing there on the radio show, and the podcast suffered. And I had actually had a plan. I think I mentioned this a couple of days ago. I had a plan for the return of the Be Conscious podcast. I had laid out a 4-week schedule of episodes in which I was going to record all 4 over the span of 4 days. That way, the meat of the podcast was canned and ready to go, and all I had to do was record kind of like a live introduction, like an up-to-date introduction. That way, nothing in it was dated. A couple of them were about mental health, and those are things that we're still going to talk about here in time. But it killed me to read that review like you only did it for a few weeks and then you left us. Like, no, man, I did it for almost half a year before that series took a break. And by the way, Be Conscious is nowhere available on iTunes right now. And that's not the fault of the company that I used to work for. I had to take it because it was, again, this was 100% my podcast. I had to take it down off of my account because it kept getting confused with the new podcast that I was posting. And episodes were getting, as I was running through all of the tests last week, episodes were bleeding over. All sorts of different things were happening, and it was confusing logos and doing all sorts of different stuff. So I actually had to take Be Conscious off of iTunes. I think it's still available on Stitcher and Google Play and some of those other podcast platforms. But I had to remove it from iTunes because it kept getting confused. It was the only platform for some reason that was getting confused here with this new podcast. In addition to your podcast subscription, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We're going to be doing some live broadcasts and some bonus episodes and interviews. That's going to be starting here real soon. I've had a huge frustration over the course of the first 2 days of this, getting the podcast posted to the YouTube channel at the promised time. And then I learned yesterday that the way I post the podcast has a direct influence on how many people see it. Like if you go back and you look at the views from podcast number 1, it posted differently than podcast number 2. And the results, they were massive. Like the results and views, it was a massive difference. So I'm working to correct that. I think I've corrected that. Hopefully, if you're listening to this on YouTube, it posted at the appropriate time today. And eventually, and when I say eventually, I mean very, very soon, in all likelihood, what's going to happen is the podcast is going to go live on YouTube, probably around 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. every morning, the podcast will go live on YouTube. That way, when we wrap up, I have a chance to do a little post-production after the live broadcast and then take the audio feed and post it to all of the podcast platforms at 12 o'clock. So that's an early plan that I've put together here as the podcast continues to grow and it continues to evolve. I have some more equipment I have to get. I have some cameras I have to test. I have to increase. I got to get better lighting here in the Palatial Podcast Studios in Northern Natomas. So if you're having trouble finding us, just search Damien Barling, particularly there on YouTube. I've got a bunch of playlists up that include old Be Conscious episodes. I got clips from the old radio show and the live stream that I used to do with Jay Ross and the Champ. And those names might be copyrighted. I might not be able to say that. The old show I used to do with those 2 other guys. I don't want to get in any trouble here. Also, my television appearances are on there, and I know I thanked Joe and Marshall and Sarah and all those guys. There's actually an old clip with Ken from Good Day Sacramento, where we make cookies together. And I'm being serious. So go check that out over there on YouTube, and please become a subscriber. I told you can ask questions. I know it's a little bit different of a format because the show isn't live, but that text line is 24/7. You can use questions. You can use that text line to interact with the show as you're listening to it, whenever you're listening to it. We get text at 2, 3, 4 in the morning because that's when people who are working different hours are listening. Man, that's awesome. We greatly appreciate it. We try to respond to every single one of them. I always say we because I'm so used to saying we, but in this situation, we is I. That is a direct line to me, and I'm responding to all of them. And one of the questions we got a couple of days ago was actually about the Sacramento Kings, and I threw this question out to you at the end of yesterday's podcast, and we got some great responses. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about your Sacramento Kings. The question, for those who don't remember, Damien, I'll summarize it a little bit. What moves do you think would make for a successful offseason by the Sacramento Kings? And basically, what moves could the Sacramento Kings make that would have you rolling your eyes? Lots and lots and lots and lots of responses came in. The one thing that it sure appears that the Sacramento Kings fan base, at least the ones who listen to this show and interact with the show, are all in on Vujacic, kid out of Orlando. And I get it. I mean, I want to remind you that's expensive. Like, you can be all in on him, but that's going to cost you about $4 and $145. Like, that's expensive, and I know how squeamish Kings fans get when it comes to spending money. Now, the kid is a stud, man. There's no denying that. He would make a great asset to the Sacramento Kings for sure, and it felt like almost anyone who mentioned his name on the text line seemed to be all in on Nikola Vujacic. So that's a good look. I like that idea. He's not my favorite target. He's a great target. He's the big money target, I guess, this coming offseason. You know, another name that I really like, and I think he would be a big money target. He's a guy I liked last year in kind of a different situation. I still like Julius Randle. I don't know where his fit is here on the Sacramento Kings. I assume, my feeling is, and this, again, you talk about consensus from the people who interact with the show. I think the consensus was Willie Cauley-Stein will not be back here. And I'm lumping in Willie Cauley-Stein won't be back with I hope Willie Cauley-Stein is not back. I disagree with that sentiment. I think Willie works very, very well with De'Aaron Fox. However, Marvin Bagley is a starter. Like, that's the end of the conversation. There's no more figuring out his role. There's no more deciding what to do with him. Obviously, there's a new head coach of the Sacramento Kings. Marvin Bagley is a starter, and that's the end of the conversation. And the better question is Harry Giles starting? Like, how is that front court working out for the Sacramento Kings? Where would Julius Randle fit in that conversation? But the guy that I really like, Tobias Harris, by the way, was another name that came up. I know that was a rumor that was. Or I don't know if it was it was out there, like a week or two ago, that Tobias Harris, that the Sacramento Kings may pursue Tobias Harris in the offseason. It's like, okay, that was the move that the text line said that's the roll your eyes move. We'll pass on that. And of course, I think we're all operating under the assumption that Harrison Barnes is gonna either restructure his current contract with the Sacramento Kings, like he's going to opt out, restructure his deal and say with the Sacramento Kings, or he's going to opt in and get a big payday, for one more year with the Sacramento Kings before negotiating anything else with anyone else. But the name that I really liked, and this is one that we've talked about for a very, very long time, I would love Patrick Beverley on this roster. His defensive presence, his attitude. Remember how everybody said when Iman Shumpert was traded, man, this team lost its swagger, it lost its attitude, it's lost its flair. I understood that line of thinking. Again, I disagreed with it, but I understood it because Iman Shumpert added something to the Sacramento Kings that the Kings didn't have. But Patrick Beverley on the floor is so good. He is so good defensively, and he does. He has that flair. He has that knack. He will get under the skin of the other team's best player. We've seen it with Russell Westbrook. We've seen it with players across the league. I want Patrick Beverley in a Sacramento Kings uniform probably more than I want any other free agent. Sorry, more than I want any other realistic free agent in this offseason for the Sacramento Kings. I think Patrick Beverley can help the Kings win games. Not that Vujacic can't. He most certainly can. And again, these are different. We're talking different tax brackets here. We're talking different salaries. Patrick Beverley isn't going to command the same type of contract that Vujacic is. He's going to attract big money. He's going to be a max player. Whoever offers him a deal, or wherever he winds up signing, it's almost certainly going to be a max deal. He's going to have a lot of offers for that 4 years, 145 or so. He's going to be able to pick and choose where he wants to play for sure. Patrick Beverley, there's going to be a little bit more finesse there. There's going to be a little bit more negotiating there. There's going to be a little bit more figuring out what his market is. But I would love Patrick Beverley in a Sacramento Kings uniform. Anytime you want to talk about the Kings, man, I know we got a while. We'll probably talk about them as the draft approaches, though. We'll talk about second-round draft picks. One scenario that was thrown in here on the text line was trading up into the first round. Getting rid of somebody and trading up into the first round. And I didn't love that idea. If the Sacramento Kings want to trade someone on their roster, I'm fully behind that. If it's I don't want another rookie, particularly one because I don't think the Sacramento Kings are trading into the top 5. Or 10. So if you start getting into, unless there's a player that you really, really love, and you're getting rid of a small piece for them, I'm good on trading up in this draft. I'm fine that the Sacramento Kings don't have a first-round draft pick. Given the season that they've had, they would have been drafting into the teens. I'm good with that. I would rather them acquire through trade or free agency a veteran that can really, really help them. If you can nab a stud like Vujacic, that's awesome. But get Patrick Beverley along with him. You have that veteran leadership, you have that attitude, and you have an unquestionable defensive presence in Patrick Beverley. So there's just a few ideas. I'm quite confident many of you disagree with them. Many of you do agree because a lot of those were your ideas. 916-888-5898. Send your thoughts in here as we beginning to wrap things up. I mentioned I'm an Apple junkie, if you haven't picked up on that. Like I have Apple TV and the HomePod, and I can say things like, hey, Siri, turn the lights on or turn the lights off or anything like that. I completely misread a recent post about Apple's big unveiling event the other day. I had kept reading something about a $1,000 Apple monitor. At least I thought that's what I was reading. I was like, wow, they're framing this as like it's expensive, but $1,000 monitor, especially from Apple, that's maybe this is their big. This is maybe they're turning the corner and they're going to start selling, less expensive merchandise. This is great. And then I realized I read it wrong. It was $1,000 monitor stand. And that $1,000 monitor stand goes with their brand new $5,000 Pro Display monitor. My bad. The best part is that monitor, that $1,000 monitor, it's the only one that works with the new $5,000 screen. The monitor stand goes with the screen. Like, you have to buy them together. So while it's a $5,000 32-inch 6K resolution monitor, you have to pay $6,000 for it because you have to get the stand that goes with it. Why are you selling them separately? Why not just say, here's our new 6K resolution 32-inch screen. It comes with the monitor stand and it's $6,000. Man, I read that so wrong. $1,000 monitor stand for your computer. I'm an Apple junkie, but I don't even have like a Mac, like a desktop. I work everything off of, my MacBook, and I have an iPad and my phone and all that stuff. I work everything off of that. I told you yesterday I was going to watch the movie Us, Jordan Peele's movie. It was available on, I think you can rent it. I'm sorry, you can't rent it yet. You can rent it in a couple of weeks, but you can buy it wherever you buy digital movies. So I got it on iTunes yesterday. And I bought it because I knew I was going to want to watch it multiple times. And I can't tell you, as soon as that movie ended, I immediately wanted to watch it again. It was a really, really good movie, but there's so much happening. And you're left to decipher what all of it means. It's a psychological thriller, a lot like Get Out, excuse me. It's a psychological thriller a lot like Get Out is, but it's a horror movie along with it. It's not super gory. I mean, it is, but it's not a slasher movie. But man, it's really, really good. If you saw it, now I'm not gonna spoil it. I don't know what the window is in which we're allowed to really, really discuss this movie. And I know I could say, spoiler alert, turn the podcast off. I don't really want to do that. But if you saw it, and out of all of the things that happened in that movie, the one thing that it ended, I sat there trying to figure this out for probably 2 hours. Could somebody please tell me, what the hell do the rabbits mean? The rabbits have to mean something. Like they were everywhere. What do they mean? Now, I probably could have cheated and Googled it, but I don't think, what did they mean? If I can't get an answer from someone on the text line tonight, I'm just going to Google it. If someone has an article where he explains where Jordan Peele explains what the rabbits mean. Now, I know that they were, all right, I don't want to spoil too much of the movie. You got to watch it. It's really, really good. Jordan Peele is a brilliant filmmaker. As weird as some of the stuff he makes is, a dude is a brilliant, brilliant filmmaker. Upon the conclusion of Us, I checked my phone and saw an alert from Bleacher Report and their WWE subsite with a picture of The Undertaker and Goldberg face to face. Apparently that was a big moment on yesterday's edition of SmackDown, which I think is at the Golden One Center. It is. It's at the Golden One Center next Tuesday. Undertaker and Goldberg in 2019. That's amazing. So they have a show coming up, another one of those propaganda shows that they're doing in Saudi Arabia, the We Have No Shame show. Goldberg versus The Undertaker and Randy Orton versus Triple H are two matches that are headlining that show. Holy cow. Remember the last time WWE was at the Golden One Center? It was supposed to be a big moment for WWE because remember, Vince McMahon came out. He had been off TV for a while, and Shane came out, and Stephanie came out, and Triple H came out, and they introduced, we're going to change. There's going to be new superstars. There's going to be new opportunities. There's going to be new matches. We're creating new. We're here for you, the fans. Goldberg versus The Undertaker. With like a combined age of 111. That's probably only a slight exaggeration. Goldberg had a brief. Now, don't get me wrong. What the WWE did with Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, I thought was great. I thought it worked. Because I think you can get away with using Brock Lesnar that way. Is Goldberg going to come out and spear The Undertaker in like 90 seconds and the match is going to be over? Because Undertaker can't have the same physicality that Brock Lesnar had against Goldberg to make this interesting or to make it fun to watch, even for 2, 3, 4 minutes. Like if those guys are in the ring too long, this is going to go south and it's going to go south really fast. Remember, this is the same company that wouldn't give us The Undertaker versus Sting because we had to see The Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt. We had to see Triple H versus Sting at the WrestleMania in Santa Clara. The second Sting signed with the WWE, it was Sting versus The Undertaker. Sting versus The Undertaker. You could have done the same exact smoke and mirrors match that you did with Triple H, with all of the variety of interferences and sledgehammers and all of the silly gimmicks that made that match very passable. It made that match, I actually thought that match was fantastic live. I really enjoyed it. I thought it made sense how they worked in the NWO if you just ignored the fact that Triple H and the NWO were hugging on the Hall of Fame stage the night before. I enjoyed the fact that they worked in Degeneration X. I thought all of that worked. And then I watched it, and listening to the commentary was brutal because they were talking about WCW and Sting and WWE versus WCW. Like, dude, you own WCW. But you knew that they were hell-bent on making Triple H beat Sting. So if you were going to do that, why not just give us The Undertaker versus Sting like we wanted to see in the first place? Who at that moment was clamoring for The Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt? You could have done that match anywhere. You didn't have to do it at WrestleMania. You should have done Sting and The Undertaker here at WrestleMania. But you kept hearing, they're too old. They won't be able to pull off a good match. But yet, here we are. How many years later? 4 or 5 years later? And we've got Goldberg versus The Undertaker. My goodness, man. And then Randy Orton versus Triple H. How many times has that match happened? Triple H and Batista had a 30-minute match at WrestleMania. I think that was the moment because I haven't watched much WWE. I haven't watched an episode of Raw or SmackDown. I kind of read what's going on online. If there's something worth seeing or if I get a text from someone, hey, you got to go check this out, or did you see what happened? I'll go check it out. But actually sat down. I used to look forward to Mondays. Not anymore. I haven't in years. But I think I tuned into WrestleMania because it's the biggest event of the year. I thought they're going to be able to. The card is good. It's too long. I didn't watch all of it. I watched a fraction of it, and I still think I watched 3.5 hours. But when that Triple H and Batista match just went on and on and on and on, that's when I realized, man, I don't think I can be a fan again. This is brutal. And everyone says, things are going to change when Vince McMahon succeeds control to Triple H. Really? Because Triple H and Batista had a 30-minute match. No match on WrestleMania went as long as Triple H and Batista did. Now we got The Undertaker versus Goldberg at like 11 a.m. on Friday morning. At least 11 a.m. Pacific time. Man, incredible. We talked a lot about Demarcus Cousins here on today's show. I wasn't the only one. Here's Steph Curry.
I'm just happy for him, to be honest. I mean, there was so much uncertainty around his timeline, coming back, and for this to be his first finals experience, you can't be, more happy for him to have an opportunity to really impact the series in a positive way for us.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously came out with a certain game plan against Gasol, right? No, he played great, and I figured, he's an all-star player. He's got tons of talent. He's a big body. Figured as the series goes on and he gets the timing back and the thing, he'll keep playing better.
Again, that was Steph Curry, followed by the head coach of the Toronto Raptors, Nick Nurse. I think Demarcus Cousins plays a major, major factor in the outcome of tonight's Game 3. If you dug the show, leave a comment, leave a rating, leave a review. They all help. Please help spread the word. Send it to your friends, particularly here in Sacramento. If you're lacking, if you're missing local sports content, I've got you covered every single day at noon. Send your thoughts to the 24/7 text line, 916-888-5898. The Warriors and the Raptors tonight. Enjoy that. We will see you tomorrow at noon here on the podcast with Damien Barling.